Welcome back, curious minds, to another deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're tackling an emotion most of us, well, think we understand. Boredom. But as we unpack this, drawing from a stack of incredible sources, including this really comprehensive paper titled Boredom.pdf, you'll find it's far more than just having nothing to do.
Yeah, it really
It's
is.
going to completely reframe what you thought you knew about those, restless moments.
Absolutely. Our mission today is really to go beyond that surface level. We'll explore why boredom isn't just like a nuisance, but actually a powerful, often overlooked signal.
A signal. Okay.
Yeah, revealing so much about our inner lives and, frankly, modern society, too. You're going to hear some surprising facts and gain a real shortcut to being genuinely well-informed on this, well, this deceptively complex topic.
Deceptively complex. I like that.
Because as our sources really drive home, it's not simply about having no tasks available. It's about not wanting to do the things that are available. That's the key distinction.
Okay, so if boredom is far more than just having nothing to do, what is it then? At its core, let's peel back the layers here.
Right. So most people think boredom is just, idleness, sitting around.
Yeah.
But here's the kicker. The sources reveal it's actually far more profound. It's that nagging, subjective emotional state where you desperately want stimulation.
You want something.
You want something, but nothing feels satisfying. It's that restless, unfocused feeling, or maybe like you're trapped in time and the clock just crawls. So it's not the absence of activity, it's the absence of desire for the available activities, that dissatisfaction with your present moment, a real lack of stimulation, meaning, or engagement.
And it's not just one monolithic feeling then. Are there different flavors of boredom?
That's a great question because, the sources identify a few distinct types, and each signals something a little different.
Okay.
So first, there's indifferent boredom. This is kind of calm, detached, like zoning out. You're just there.
Yeah.
Not really bothered, but not engaged either.
Okay, passive.
Exactly. Then there's searching boredom. Here, you're actively looking for stimulation. Fidgeting, scrolling endlessly on your phone, pacing around. There's an active hunt for something, anything to do.
Restless leg syndrome, but for the mind.
Kind of, yeah. Then reactant boredom. Now, this one has an edge. It's when you feel trapped and actually angry or frustrated that you're bored.
Like being stuck in a really long, pointless meeting.
Precisely. Or maybe detention back in school. It's a feeling of resistance, being held against your will.
Right.
And finally, apathetic boredom. This one's heavier. It's more like emotional numbness, a deep disinterest, and it's often linked to things like depression.
That's a significant distinction.
It really is. And each of these types tells us something different about what's going on inside. Maybe a mismatch between your expectations and reality, maybe a desire for agency or novelty, or even, strangely, understimulation when things are just too easy, or the opposite, oversaturation where everything feels meaningless.
It's easy to just write off boredom as a modern thing, too much tech, too much free time.
Right.
But what really struck me in the sources was how deeply your philosophers have wrestled with this. It's not trivial at all, is it?
Not even close. It's almost unsettling how thinkers across centuries, we're talking Kierkegaard, Heidegger, Schopenhauer, saw boredom not as some minor annoyance, but as a central, maybe even terrifying aspect of just being human.
Terrifying. Wow.
Yeah. Kierkegaard, for instance, he famously called it the root of all evil.
Oh, okay. Not greed, not malice, but boredom.
Boredom. His argument was basically that it's so unbearable, it forces us into desperate distractions, anything to avoid it, and that prevents us from confronting deeper truths or building genuine meaning in our lives.
So it's an escape hatch from ourselves.
In a way, yes. And Heidegger, another profound voice, suggested that boredom can actually reveal the nothingness of life, which sounds bleak, but he saw it as potentially opening a door to authenticity if we dare to actually, sit with it. And then Schopenhauer, he saw boredom as almost proof that life lacks inherent meaning. He argued, look, if life were naturally meaningful, why would we grow weary of it so easily?
That historical and philosophical weight really grounds it, doesn't it? It proves boredom isn't just some first world problem or a symptom of modern life.
Exactly. It's woven into the human experience.
Which then begs the question, if it's so ancient and profound, what are the actual triggers for it in our, day-to-day lives? Why do we get bored?
Well, typically it emerges when our mental state and our environment just don't line up. When we crave engagement or meaning but feel like we can't access it. A few key causes really stand out from the research.
Okay, like what?
A big one is a lack of meaning. If the activity you're doing just feels pointless or unfulfilling, especially repetitive tasks, that's a classic boredom trigger.
Makes sense.
Then there's a lack of autonomy. When we feel forced into situations, without choice or control, boredom becomes a kind of protest, a reaction to that lost agency.
Right, like that meeting example again.
Exactly. And here's a really eye-opening one, especially for us today. Overstimulation leading to numbness.
Ah, the digital age paradox.
Precisely. The sources suggest that in our hyper-connected world, boredom isn't always just a lack of stimuli. It's often more like a withdrawal symptom.
Well, withdrawal from what?
From constant high dopamine hits from our screens, notifications, endless feeds. Our brains get so used to that instant gratification that, normal reality starts to feel dull in comparison.
So that's slightly terrifying.
It is, and it creates this really insidious loop. Boredom drives us to seek stimulation, we get it, our brains adapt, and then more boredom sets in because the threshold gets higher.
So the cure becomes the cause.
In a way, yes. The more we chase external fixes, the more we might be training ourselves to be chronically bored with actual unmediated life.
Wow. Okay, any other major causes?
Yeah, the last main one is low challenge or high predictability. Tasks that are just too easy, too repetitive, require zero thought. Total bore fest. But interestingly, the flip side can also be true. If something is way too hard or overwhelming, we might just disengage and feel bored as a kind of defense mechanism, as a way to avoid the struggle.
As avoidance.
Yeah.
Right, so we've got lack of meaning, lack of autonomy, this overstimulation numbness cycle, and the challenge level being off.
That pretty much covers the core triggers, yeah.
Given all that, what do people typically do when they hit that wall of boredom? And what are the implications?
Right, so our responses vary hugely. A very common one is just seeking distraction, right?
Scroll, the endless scroll.
Exactly. Scrolling, binge-watching videos, snacking, gaming. These are those quick dopamine fixes, often very reactive, low-effort escapes.
Guilty as charged.
We all are sometimes. Then some people actually turn it into something creative. They start drawing, playing music, building something, or just daydreaming. They use boredom as a launch pad for imagination.
That sounds healthier.
It generally is. Others might socialize, turn to friends or family, sometimes for genuine connections, sometimes, honestly, just to avoid being alone with their own thoughts. And then, oddly enough, some people procrastinate. They use boredom as an excuse not to do the productive or meaningful things they probably should be doing.
Huh. Using boredom to avoid not being bored.
Kind of, yeah. It's a strange loop. And finally, a less common but maybe the most powerful response. Reflecting or philosophizing. Where that deeper, maybe existential boredom leads to real introspection and deep thought.
So we've covered the typical traps, those quick fixes that, as you said, often just lead back to more boredom.
All right, the unhealthy cycle.
What are the truly healthy ways to engage with it? How can we turn boredom into something, useful, or at least peaceful?
Exactly. Healthy responses involve a conscious shift away from just reacting. Think about things like curiosity-driven engagement.
Okay, what does that look like?
It means not just skimming, but really reading something new, deep diving into a topic you're genuinely curious about. Engaging the mind intentionally.
Right.
Or creative expression. Writing, drawing, playing an instrument, actively converting that restless energy into some kind of invention or creation.
Making something out of the nothingness.
Precisely. Then there's mindful presence. This could be formal meditation, sure, but also just journaling. Or simply deciding to enter the boredom fully. Putting the phone down, no distractions, just being present with whatever thoughts or feelings come up. Making peace with stillness.
That sounds hard.
It can be, especially at first. Another healthy route is meaningful socialization. This isn't just killing time with chatter, it's intentional conversation, maybe volunteering, connecting with others purposefully.
Connection with purpose, I like that.
And finally, intentional rest. Sometimes boredom is just a signal that you need to genuinely slow down. Gentle activities like gardening, taking a walk without headphones, or even just taking a nap can be incredibly restorative. It's treating boredom as a cue, not a crisis.
Okay, so those are the constructive paths. What about the destructive ones we should watch out for?
Well, the unhealthy coping mechanisms often fall into a few traps. We mentioned doomscrolling or excessive screen time that triggers reward systems but doesn't actually nourish you, often leaving you feeling emptier and more bored later.
The empty calories of the internet.
That's a good way to put it. Then there are outright addictive behaviors, overspending, overeating, substance use, trying to fill that inner void. but usually making it bigger in the long run.
Yeah.
Sometimes it manifests as self-sabotage. People might pick fights, stir up drama, engage in risky behavior, basically seeking stimulation, any kind of stimulation, even negative, at any cost.
Just to feel something.
Exactly. And finally, chronic avoidance. This is the person who always has to be busy, always has music or a podcast on, never allows for silence. It often signals a deeper fear of actually confronting what's going on inside.
That fear of silence.
Yeah.
That leads to a really thought-provoking question from the sources. Is boredom fundamentally a privilege?
Yes, that's such an important point, and the sources explore it with real nuance.
Because it sounds almost counterintuitive, right? If someone's bored, surely they're not in a privileged position.
In many ways, though, yes, boredom often is a privilege. Think about it. Experiencing boredom usually requires free time. It requires a basic level of safety. It implies you have an abundance of options, even if none appeal.
Meaning you're not struggling for basic survival.
Exactly. You're not working constantly just to eat. You're not in immediate danger. You're not in a crisis situation. For vast stretches of human history, people were just too busy trying to stay alive, find food, avoid predators. They likely didn't have the luxury of being bored in the way we mean it.
So in that sense, it's a modern luxury, especially in the developed world.
Very much so. The research points out that someone who says, "I'm bored," is usually not cold, hungry, endangered, or enslaved. And that very fact, having the space to be bored, is a sign of immense privilege.
But the material also knows that boredom cuts across class lines. It's not just for the wealthy or those with tons of free time. How do we square that?
Right, that's the crucial nuance. While the opportunity for boredom might correlate with privilege, the feeling itself can manifest differently across economic divides.
How so?
Well, working class boredom might show up in the form of soul-crushing repetitive labor, or those long, mind-numbing commutes. There's boredom there, born from monotony and lack of stimulation or meaning in the task.
Yep.
Upper-class boredom, on the other hand, might look more like that deep existential ennui, feeling empty or adrift despite having material wealth, endless options, maybe even achieving external success. A sort of, is this all there is feeling.
So the flavor of boredom might differ, but the core feeling of disconnection can hit anyone.
Exactly. Ultimately, the sources suggest that while privilege can certainly create the conditions for certain types of boredom, the underlying feeling isn't purely about material circumstances. It's fundamentally about a sense of disconnection from self, from meaning, from engagement, regardless of your situation.
We often just brush boredom off, like, I'm just bored. But it could feel surprisingly bad, can't it? That quote in the sources about boredom's unique pain, less sharp than fear, but more hollow.
Yes.
Less urgent than anger, but more unsettling. That really resonated. It puts words to something I think we've all felt but maybe couldn't quite name. Why is it so uniquely unsettling?
That quote is incredibly insightful because it nails something distinct about boredom's discomfort. It doesn't have the jolt of fear, right? Or the focused energy of anger, or even the clear weight of sadness.
No, it's more diffuse.
Exactly. It's insidious. It can feel like a kind of emotional erosion, a slow grinding down of your psyche. It's unsettling precisely because it highlights an absence.
An absence of meaning.
An absence of meaning, of purpose, of engagement. And that void can feel much more disorienting than facing a specific negative emotion where at least you know what you're dealing with.
Right. And unlike, say, guilt or shame, which have social context, boredom feels kind of dumb.
Yeah, people often feel stupid or even guilty for being bored. Like, I have all this opportunity. I shouldn't feel this way. There's less social validation for it.
So that adds another layer of discomfort.
Definitely. This unique pain comes partly because it highlights that meaning vacuum, which can trigger existential unease. It erodes motivation, makes you feel listless, apathetic. It screws with your perception of time. Minutes feel like hours. And as you said, it often feels unjustified, which just makes you feel worse about feeling bad.
Can we even measure it? Like, we have pain scales for physical pain.
It's tricky, obviously, because it's so subjective. But yes, psychologists do try to measure it. There are things like the boredom proneness scale, which uses self-report questionnaires.
Okay.
And neuroscience is starting to look at it, too. Some studies link boredom to lower activity in the brain's reward pathways. But interestingly, increased activity in areas like the frontal lobe.
Increased. Why?
The theory is that it's the brain kind of trying to wake itself up, searching for stimulation, trying to generate some internal content because the external world isn't providing enough.
Fascinating. The brain trying to jumpstart itself out of dullness.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, now our sources delve even deeper into territory that feels, well, quite profound. They suggest boredom acts like a mirror,
Mm-hmm.
and that behind it often lies this thing called the fear of self. That sounds pretty intense. What exactly is this fear of self, and how does it connect to boredom?
This is where it gets really foundational, I think. At its core, the fear of self is basically the avoidance of your own inner reality.
Avoiding yourself.
Yeah, it's the deep discomfort, maybe even dread, of being truly alone with your own thoughts, your impulses, your unacknowledged emotions like anger or shame you've buried. It's the fear of facing your unfulfilled potential, or maybe confronting the parts of yourself you don't like, and even that quiet existential terror of maybe not knowing who you really are beneath the surface. As Carl Jung famously put it, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. It's that profound resistance to facing your own shadow, your truth, maybe even your own perceived emptiness or flaws.
But why? Why would people fear themselves so profoundly? We spend our whole lives with ourselves. It seems counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? But there's several deep-seated reasons. For one, many of us are just raised to look outward, focus on achievement, performance, getting external validation.
Right, society rewards that.
It does. So our inner world can feel like this unfamiliar, maybe even dangerous territory. We haven't been taught how to navigate it. We fear the shadow parts. Maybe we secretly believe we're bad or broken or unlovable if we really look.
The skeletons in the closet.
Exactly. But paradoxically, sometimes we also fear the light.
Fear the light. What does that mean?
Fear our own potential, the vastness of what we could be, and the responsibility that comes with actually stepping into that power. It can feel overwhelming.
That's a fascinating paradox. Fear of failure and fear of success.
Right. And there's also just a basic fear of losing control, of uncovering unstable emotions or old traumas or uncomfortable truths we've carefully kept buried.
The source material really hits on why exploring this is so uncomfortable. It mentions needing honesty without escape, sitting with ambiguity, surfacing buried pain.
Yes.
It warns that this can really threaten the ego and lead to what it calls dangerous questions like, what if I don't like who I've become?
Oh, well, that's right. It is uncomfortable because it strips away our usual defenses. When you're just with yourself, there's nowhere to hide. But, and this is the crucial part, the rewards of facing yourself, of moving through that fear, are immense.
Like what?
We're talking about profound freedom, real clarity about who you are and what you want, deeper emotional capacity, genuine inner power and integration. It's like that classic hero's journey narrative Joseph Campbell talked about.
The cave you fear to enter.
Holds the treasure you seek. Exactly. The fear of self is like this psychological gatekeeper. If you constantly run from it, often using boredom-busting distractions as your escape vehicle, you risk living a life that feels, well, kind of superficial or repetitive. But if you dare to turn inward, that's where the potential for real transformation lies.
Okay, so if this fear of self is often lurking behind boredom, and we want to move beyond just constantly distracting ourselves, how do we actually start moving towards, say, self-enjoyment? That sounds like a huge leap, especially if you're used to avoiding yourself. How do you do it without it feeling fake or forced?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's definitely not about just slapping on a happy face or forcing positivity. That rarely works. Our sources offer some really tangible, respectful strategies for this journey inward.
Okay, respectful strategies. I like the sound of that.
First one, reframe without lying. Instead of trying to force positive thinking, aim for neutral reappraisal. So it's not everything is great when it's not. It's more like shifting from this is awful to this is hard, but it's not impossible, or I feel uncomfortable instead of this is unbearable.
More realistic.
Less pressure. Exactly. Second, talk to yourself like a stranger you respect. Think about it. How would you talk to a friend or even just an acquaintance who is struggling? You'd likely offer context, patience, maybe some kindness. Apply that same standard to your own inner dialogue. Would you tell your friend you're completely useless? Probably not, so why say it to yourself?
That's a good check.
Third, build proof that you can be trusted. Self-trust isn't just a feeling you conjure up, it's built, like a muscle. Start small. Keep one tiny promise to yourself daily. Maybe it's, I'll drink a glass of water when I wake up, or I'll go for a 5-minute walk. Doesn't matter how small. It's about building a track record, proving to yourself you can rely on yourself.
Small wins build trust.
Okay. Fourth, write without an audience. Journaling can be incredibly powerful, but not if you're performing for some imagined reader. The point is just being with the mess, as one source puts it. Not solving everything, not sounding wise, just getting it out. raw and honest.
Permission to be messy.
Totally. Fifth, play without proving. Engage in activities that have absolutely no utility. No goal, no performance metric, no need to be good at it. Think pure play, maybe doodling, messing with clay, dancing ridiculously in your living room, playing a silly game. This helps the nervous system feel safe and allowed to simply be without pressure.
Reclaiming play. I remember doing that as a kid, just getting lost in something pointless.
Exactly. We lose that ability sometimes. Sixth, counter negative thoughts with curiosity, not battle. When that harsh inner critic pipes up, instead of getting into a fight like, shut up, brain, try getting curious. Ask, where did that thought come from? Or, is that really true? Or is that the only way to see this? It creates distance and perspective.
Less confrontation, more investigation.
Yes. Seventh, separate identity from intrusion. This is key. Remind yourself, that's a thought, not a truth. Or that's a feeling, it will pass. Not every thought or emotion that pops into your head is fundamentally you. Some are just echoes of the past, or old defense mechanisms, or just random mental noise. You don't have to fuse with all of it.
Distinguishing the signal from the noise.
Precisely. And finally, eighth, define enjoyment on your own terms. Enjoying your own company doesn't necessarily mean being bubbly or constantly entertained. It could mean finding deep peace in silence. It could mean finding delight in quiet curiosity about the world or yourself. It could mean genuinely liking your own quirks and weirdness. It's about cultivating intimacy with your own mind, whatever that looks like for you.
So it's not about becoming someone else, but becoming more comfortable with who you already are.
Exactly. The whole shift is subtle but powerful. It's moving from asking what's wrong with me to asking what's going on with me, or shifting from, I hate being alone with myself, to maybe I just haven't learned how to do that comfortably yet. It's a process of learning and practice.
That feels much more achievable. Okay, to kind of round out our deep dive now, let's touch on some of the more nuanced counterpoints and paradoxes about boredom that the sources brought up. Things that challenge maybe even what we've just discussed.
Absolutely. Because boredom isn't simple. And there are some really thought-provoking twists.
Lay 'em on us.
Okay, first, boredom isn't always bad. It's a transitional space. Instead of seeing it purely as a negative state to escape, what if we viewed it as a necessary liminal state? Like, being in a cocoon, it's uncomfortable, maybe dark, but it holds potential energy. It's the space before transformation.
So not a problem, but a process.
Potentially, yes. Second, a really radical one, is boredom even real or just a label for discomfort? Some argue that boredom is just this vague placeholder we use for other harder-to-name feelings, like underlying anxiety or apathy, or maybe that deep existential dread. What if saying I'm bored actually means I don't know what I want or need right now, and that uncertainty feels really uncomfortable, maybe even scary?
Whoa, so the word itself might be a way to avoid naming something deeper.
It's a possibility to consider. Third, modern boredom may be addiction withdrawal. We touched on this, but it's worth emphasizing. In our hyperstimulated world, maybe what feels like boredom isn't a true lack of meaning, but literally withdrawal symptoms from the constant dopamine hits we're used to. Is it the absence of meaning or the absence of manipulated reward? A crucial difference.
Right. Is it existential angst or just digital detox?
Could be a mix of both. Fourth, ancient humans probably weren't bored, should we be? Hunter-gatherers likely experienced periods of stillness, sure, but it was often relational, purposeful, connected to observing nature, community rhythms. Our modern boredom often feels fragmented, isolated, saturated with choice paralysis. Is our type of boredom a relatively new invention, born from abundance but lacking clear direction?
A product of our specific time and culture.
Perhaps. Fifth, boredom as a compass toward authenticity. Here's another powerful reframe. What if boredom is actually your soul or your psyche rejecting simulation, rejecting things that aren't truly aligned with you? Maybe it doesn't mean you need more entertainment. Maybe it means this isn't you, this isn't quite right, try a different path.
So to signal to course correct.
A potential signal, yes.
Yeah.
Sixth, boredom as a rebellion against productivity culture. In a world obsessed with efficiency, optimization, monetizing every second, boredom is seen as waste, failure. But what if feeling bored, and maybe even allowing yourself to be bored, is a quiet form of refusal, a reclaiming of the right to just exist, to not constantly produce or perform?
A micro-rebellion. I like that.
And finally, seventh, bringing back the philosophers. The existential layer, boredom and the abyss. Thinkers like Heidegger and Camus saw profound boredom not just as dullness, but as an opening, an encounter with the absurd, a raw awareness of just being here, where the usual meanings and distractions fall away and the world can feel strangely empty.
That sounds terrifying again.
It can be. This abyss, this feeling of meaninglessness, can either swallow us up into nihilism, or if we can somehow face it, it can awaken us. It can lead to existential clarity, becoming the very birthplace of the meaning we then choose to create for ourselves.
So the void itself can become the source of meaning.
That's the existential hope, yes. That confrontation with nothingness is where authentic existence begins.
Wow. What a journey we've been on. From just, the simple feeling of having nothing appealing to do.
Right.
We've unpacked all these psychological types, the deep philosophical weight, that really critical connection to the fear of self. And now even seeing boredom as this potential catalyst for profound personal growth or a signpost to authenticity.
It really covers a lot of ground, and as our sources so eloquently conclude, boredom is intensely self-reflective. Ultimately, it says less about the external world, whether your job is dull or your weekend plans fell through, and far more about us.
About our inner world.
Exactly. About what we truly value, how we regulate our own attention, how we handle freedom and choice, what kind of stimulation we've normalized for ourselves, and maybe what truths we might be subtly trying not to face. If you think about physical pain as the body's way of screaming, hey, something is wrong here, pay attention, then maybe boredom is the psyche's quieter but persistent way of asking, are you still living like you mean it?
Wow. Are you still living like you mean it? That is a powerful thought to just sit with.
It is. It reframes boredom entirely.
So next time that familiar feeling of boredom whispers, or maybe shouts, consider how you might answer that question. Perhaps it's not just a void to be filled with the nearest distraction, but actually an invitation to look deeper.
Couldn't have said it better myself. An invitation.